Family History Training. A summary of helping others to take the next step. Turning hearts of the children to their fathers.
Hello. Welcome to Helping Others Take the Next Step. I'm Diane Loosley. I'm the Director of Patron Services for Family Search. And
I'm Brian Edwards, and my teams work hard to make sure the Family Search website experience is a good experience for you.
And we're happy to be here with you today, and we'd like to share some ideas with you about how to help others take the next step. Brian?
Well, to begin with, we want to remind you about Elder Cook's invitation to each of us to make sure that we find, take, and teach. So what that means then is that we're supposed to go out and find our ancestors who need temple ordinances, prepare those names for the temple, and take them to the temple and perform those ordinances, or share them with somebody else who can do the work for us. And once you've done that, go ahead and teach somebody else to do what you just did, to do a find, take, and teach experience.
So your calling as family history consultants is to help others to become Saviors on Mount Zion. That's a pretty amazing calling. It's pretty cool that you get to do that. And it's pretty exciting for us.
Now the first principle, as we think about our work as consultants, the first principle we want to think about is the importance of supporting our priesthood leaders. So we'd encourage you to go to your priesthood leaders and ask them what goals or what objectives do they have as priesthood leaders. And then as you talk to them, sometimes they don't have specific objectives in mind around family history other than they want it to be done. And you might simply ask them, what are your objectives that you have in the ward or the stake or the branch that you're in? And they may say, well, my focus right now is on retaining our new converts. Or my focus right now is on bringing people back into activity, or it's on missionary work. And guess what? The cool thing about that is that family history can help with all those objectives. So as you speak with your leaders, look for ways in which you can use your calling to support the objectives that they have for the ward or branch in which you reside.
The second principle that we wanted to talk to you about is to be proactive. So I want you to think about what would happen if missionaries sat at the chapel. Maybe they put a sign out front and says, "Lessons taught here." What do you think would happen? Would they teach very many people the gospel?
I don't think they would, Diane.
I don't think they would
empty.
either. Yeah, they'd just be kind of, twiddling their thumbs waiting for people to come. Think about whether you do that as consultants. Do you sit and wait for people to come to you? Do you sit and wait? Or are you proactive? Do you reach out to people? Do you go to their homes? Do you pray? Do you seek the guidance of the Spirit in understanding who's ready for this and who is going to be at just the right place in their life, that they're ready for this work in their lives? So I just want to talk about different groups of people for you to think about as you're trying to increase your teaching pool. Because that's really what you're doing, is teaching people how to do this work. So first, think about the youth. The youth have been promised by several apostles now protection and strength if they do this work. And what else do we want for our youth? We want them to have that protection and strength. And they're just built for the technology. I mean, they've grown up with it. They know how to do this. They're perfect for it. You just have to approach them a little bit differently than you would an older person, right? So another group that you might want to think about is new converts. New converts have just had an amazing experience, a spiritual experience where they have been converted and understand the importance of being baptized. They've just had the joy of being baptized. And they're in a perfect place where if you talk to them about extending that joy to their family members who have gone on before them, it's a perfect time for them to understand that and to want to share that joy with their family. And then by going then to the temple and having additional spiritual experiences, it helps strengthen their conversion. And then encouraging them to go and share that with their family and the feelings that they had, and teaching others to do the same. It's a perfect way to help our converts to continue to grow their faith and their testimony through these additional spiritual experiences. So think about new converts that might be in your area, in your ward or stake or branch. Young families is another group to think about. Now, young families, you have to think differently about them too, because you've got the little kids and you know, you sit down and you've got to figure out how you're going to keep them engaged and excited. Maybe you can come up with some games for them to play with their ancestors. Maybe you can come up with some thoughts around how to share stories of their family. So maybe they act out a story, or maybe they, you could do some ancestor trading cards or something. But think about creative ways to keep the young people engaged, because the Brethren asked us to do this as a family. Family history is about families. So let's get our young families involved and seek the guidance of the Spirit as you contemplate how you will help these young families to get involved in family history. And then empty nesters. Generally they have time. They have some time that they can work on things. And they start to think about leaving something behind, a legacy for their families. When they're gone, you know, they want to leave something that they can be remembered by. They want to tell the stories of their grandparents, and so it's a perfect time in their life when they're receptive to this and might be interested in doing this. Now, another way you can increase your teaching pool is to, when you meet with someone, after the visit, think about how the missionaries do it. What do they do after they visit with someone? They ask for a referral, right? So think about that. Talk with the person and say, is there someone in your family? Is there someone in the ward? Is there someone else you think is ready for this message of family history and doing family history and then taking their ancestors to the temple? And then go with them, you know, as a consultant, help them. So think about that process. That's another way to increase your teaching pool, is to get referrals.
Diane, when we were out doing some research in Peru, we came across a family history consultant who was just amazing. And she's really set an example for me in how I approach things. And we've talked about her a lot internally. Her name was Melva. Now, Melva moved into this branch, and she was called as a family history consultant. But she viewed herself as a family history missionary. And what that meant was she was a missionary. The entire branch was her teaching pool. And so she said, well, I'm going to help everyone to find and take a name to the temple. And so she began going through the ward list with all of the active members who attended church. She went week after week, she'd go knock on someone's door and say, hi, I'm here to help you find and take names to the temple of your ancestors. And as she did that, she went through the entire list of everyone in the entire branch who was active. She finished that and then began on all those who were less active, who weren't attending very regularly. And she went and introduced herself to them and offered to help them with their family history and help them take a name to the temple. And often the response was, well, I'm not able to go to the temple right now. And she would say, no problem. Let's go talk with the bishop and you can get ready to go to the temple. In the meantime, let's start doing your family history. And so she did this. She was able to help not only those who were going to church regularly, but those who were less active, to feel that joy in their hearts again, to have their hearts turned towards their ancestors, to remember the excitement they felt when they were baptized, and to extend that to their family members, and to help them get back with the bishop so they can get ready to go to the temple themselves. So that kind of proactivity and reaching out to people was just a huge example to me in my life. And I hope it's one that inspires you as well. Now, as we think about this, to make the experience successful, it's important to prepare for the visit. Before you meet with a person, prepare. So how do we do that? Well, what I like to do is I like to go talk with the person I'm going to help, and I ask them, I offer to assist them, and I tell them I'm happy to help you find and take names to the temple. And then I say, but what are your goals? What would you like to accomplish? And then knowing that, I have a good place to start so that I'm lined up and aligned with what they want to accomplish. Now also remember that you are entitled to revelation. Whether you've been set apart as a family history consultant, or whether you're simply helping do the Lord's work by helping family members, friends, and neighbors to do their family history, you are entitled to revelation from Heavenly Father.
So please seek the Spirit as you meet with people, because it will help you to narrow in, and the Lord knows them better than we do, and He'll know exactly where to direct us to go.
Diane, I found in my own life that the Spirit really directs us if we humbly seek for it. It's amazing how much the Lord wants these people to receive their ordinances, and He wants the members on this earth to be touched by the spirit of Elijah, to feel the Spirit in their lives. And so that Spirit is there for us as we seek for it. So I'd like to share with you just a little bit of the tools. This is a little bit of a how-to session as well. So now the old way of doing family history and helping somebody else out was that we'd sit down just out and just start from scratch. Say, let's take a look at your family tree. And what often happens is I've watched consultants in this situation is that pretty soon they've got the mouse and they've got the keyboard and they're clicking away and they're doing things and the person's watching and they're getting a little bit frustrated, confused, and next thing, and it gets pretty intense because they don't know where they're going. They haven't planned ahead of time. So there's a new way to do this, and I want to show you a few tools that are going to make that easier. And the first thing I want to show you here is called Help Others. So this is a feature, it's often what I think of as one of the best kept secrets on the entire website.
Yeah.
But it's very, very powerful if you use it. So if you go to the family tree, there's a little link up in the upper right-hand corner that says Help Others. So if you click on that then, up pops a little box, and you can put in the person's username and their helper ID. So the way I would use this is I would go to somebody and say, I would like to help you with your family history. We'd talk about their goals and objectives. And after we do that, I'd say, may I have your permission to look at your family tree? So I can prepare ahead of time before we sit down together. As they give me that permission, I'd say, great, would you mind sharing with me your username and your helper number? And I can go ahead and do that. Now, the helper number, by the way, it's a 5-digit number, and for most members of the church, it's the last 5 digits of their membership record number. So that's found on the Temple Recommend, or they can get it from the ward clerk or the branch clerk. But those 5 digits, along with their username, can let you into their tree to look at them on their behalf, so you can prepare ahead of time.
Or you can also use their full name and their birth date with the
helper number again.
Helper number
yes.
too.
But the thing is, we don't want to ask them for their password. That's private to them. So we use the helper number instead with this process. Once we've gone in, we can look at that. Now the other thing is, we'll be launching very soon. So I'm going to give you a sneak peek into the future. We're going to have a new tab on here. If you look at that tab right there, then this tab allows us to go in, and we're actually going to show you a ward directory or a stake directory of those in your ward or stake. And you'll be able to click on someone's name, send an email invitation to them asking for permission, and when they accept that, you'll have access to go straight and look at the family tree. So the way this works then is I look at this, I look through the list of names, and I choose somebody I'm going to be helping. I then click on that and decide to send them an email. And once I send them an email, it sends them an invitation, they accept it, and I now have access to go in on their behalf to prepare ahead of time, so I'm ready to go meet with them when I'm ready to meet.
It's going to be much simpler. Have that.
So the Help Others is already on the website right now. The ability to use a ward directory or stake directory is coming in the future. So, you know, I often think about this. I think about teaching children to ride bikes. And you know, Diane, there was an interesting scientific study done recently.
Oh, yeah?
And they studied what is the best way to teach a 5-year-old how to ride a bike. And the researchers discovered that the best way does not involve putting the 5-year-old on an adult-sized mountain bike and pushing them over a cliff.
Really? You mean that's not the best way to teach a 5-year-old?
No, they scientifically proven it's not the best way to do it. Now, obviously, there wasn't a scientific study that did that because that would be a ridiculous study to do. And yet, for some reason, sometimes as helpers and consultants, we do that to people that are just trying to learn how to do family history. We get so excited that we jump into all the hard things. We're merging records and names, and we're attaching sources, and we're going to 15 different websites, and we're analyzing things, and we're doing all the research that we love to do, and we lose them like that 5-year-old on the bicycle. So as you approach this, please don't do that to them. We know in Scripture about precept upon precept, line upon line, here a little, there a little. The same thing applies to family history. That's how we approach and work with people. So start simple, start small, and take things at their pace, and don't try to do too much in the first visit. For example, when I'm working with somebody, I avoid doing any kind of tree merges. As I prepare ahead of time, I look, and if there's a messed up date in the tree, I go somewhere else that's simpler. So I don't have to take them in too deep, because I want to speak to their level. Now, all of us are new at some time, and so, please don't treat them like an expert. President Monson said to us, none of us can become an expert in family history work without first being a novice. So remember, the people you're helping are usually novices. So this is a little bit like training wheels, moving to a bicycle, moving to mountain biking. We do the same thing. So what we do with family history is sometimes we start with simply looking for green temple icons that we can find that already need temple ordinances. As they get more advanced, we might involve them with hints, and then eventually move on to records research.
So we're going to talk about each one of these, and we're going to start with the training wheels one with green temples and what that might look like. So with green temples, of course, the site identifies opportunities that there might be. And if you spend time in the tree ahead of time, you can identify places where you might find some green temples that are ready to go and that don't have duplicates and need to be merged, right? Because that's the all-terrain going down the hill crash experience. So find the places where it looks like they're good and you can proceed with the green temples. The next level of help is
hint harvesting. So we're going to talk a little bit about hint harvesting, and we're going to give you a very quick overview of how that might work. So the first thing we do is we work our way back in the family tree to somebody who was born before 1800. Now typically I don't go back beyond about 1790 or so because I want to make sure the records, that the information is good in the family tree. This example I went a little bit further back because I knew the connections back to this point were good. So we go back to this ancestor, we then click on them, up comes a person card, we click on tree, it then puts them at the base of the family tree, and then we click on the descendancy view icon, and when we do that, it turns things around and we look at the descendants of this particular ancestor. Then we choose an ancestor, and if there's an arrow next to them, that means that person has a spouse and possibly children. There may be descendants of that person. So as we click on that, it opens up to show their descendants, and we can see information here. Now in this particular instance, there was a green temple icon sitting right there. And so this would be a great place to take somebody. However, as I researched this particular area ahead of time, so I didn't get confused with the person, I found that this green temple icon, even though it didn't say there were duplicates, there actually were duplicates. And so I didn't want to take the person again into a duplicate situation with merging and so forth. So I point out and said, here's this one, we'll do that one later. Let's move on to something else in the family tree. And then as we go through this then, we can go down and look at and say, well, gee, there are hints. And so we often look, I love the blue icons, but blue icons down the side mean they're record hints for the person.
Yeah, now, we're going to give you some examples of what the hints might look like. So here's some examples. These are, as you notice, they're marriages, births, deaths, census, things that have very clear relationships and places and dates and names, the kinds of things that you need to be able to find names to take to the temple. And the great thing about the hints is they're extremely accurate. In fact, I was hearing Robert Kerr, who's our person who takes care of this, and he said 98% accuracy on hints. So of 100, there's 2 that probably aren't accurate. Okay, so that's pretty good. And so you can trust them pretty well. You want to take a look.
If I can interrupt though.
Yeah.
There's still that chance that it might be wrong.
Yes.
And so I don't go in blind with hints either.
Right.
I check them out. In fact, we find that the hints are really, really accurate in some types of records and less in other kinds or other locations.
Yeah.
And so I go in ahead of time, I analyze the hints, I make sure they're good, correct hints. Because again, I don't want to get confusion from the person, and I don't want to confuse them by trying to figure out really deep things. So I do all that as I prepare ahead of time with those hints.
That's perfect. And some of the things to look for is these blue icons and purple icons. So the blue icons are the record hints, purple icons are research suggestions. And when you see those in combination, those are really great places to focus in on. And there's some other icons to watch for in combination with these.
Let's talk about that for a second. So as I went down and looked through this area in the family tree, I found this section right here. And this really caught my eye because I looked at this and I saw a lot of yellow temple icons combined with blue icons for record hints, combined with purple icons for research suggestions. This is awesome. Now a yellow temple icon means this person has not had their temple ordinances done, but they don't have enough information to be able to qualify for temple ordinances yet. But as I go through and resolve those record hints, I can probably find enough information around names, dates, and places to be able to qualify that person to receive the temple ordinances in the system. So this is an area where I said, perfect, I love this. I'm going to zero in here. The other thing I saw is I saw several other children that didn't have an arrow next to them. No arrow means no spouse and no children. But I thought, hey, as I look at Joseph J. Woolley, yellow temple icon, blue record hints, I'll bet I may be able to find a spouse and children for him. So I looked at the hints on this person, Joseph J. Woolley, and sure enough, there were 3 census matches. A census is awesome, lots of family members in those. So I said, let's look at that. So as I went through and started looking at those, I found that in the 1860 census, we were able to add the wife. In the 1870 census, we added 3 children. So as we did this then, we were able to add them, and suddenly we had a whole family that needed temple ordinances. We had sources attached, we had good information, and we had people ready for temple ordinances. So at this point, what do? We'll celebrate.
Woohoo!
Tell the person how exciting this is. Let them see how awesome it is to be able to find these people. Help them reserve them. Help them know what to do next, right?
Yeah. Well, and have fun. I mean, celebrate with them.
Yeah.
This is
I don't always yell
opportunity.
yoo-hoo like Diane does, but I do get excited with them because it's a fun thing to do. So whatever your style of celebrate is, celebrate with them. Have fun. And by the other thing to notice about this is that I have right now 5 people with green temple icons right here. Up above, I've got more record hints, and I've got more temple icons, or yellow ones that I can resolve. Guess what? I'm not going to do them today with that person because I don't want to wear them out. I don't want to overwhelm them. We've got 5. Let's have them go off and do the temple work for those 5 people. I don't want to get them overwhelmed. I don't want to do too much in one sitting. I also don't want to have them reserve more names than they can actually do in the temple. So you don't have to do it all, especially not in the first visit, and don't give them more than they can actually do in the temple.
Yeah, because that's going to take them a minute to get those done.
It is. So, as you think about this again, when you're working with beginners, teach at their level. Don't go too fast, don't go too far, and by preparing ahead of time, I can have an easy path. What a friend of mine calls the happy path.
Yeah.
And I like those words.